The economic paradox that will change your life forever. Martin North, John Adams, In the Interest of the People. Hi, John.
Hello, sir.
That's a pretty interesting title, and to say insignificant would be completely wrong.
Indeed. So we have a very interesting story to tell the audience today. And we're going to tell the story in the form of a paradox. That's something I've learnt over the last few years, and it's taken me several years to fully get my head across about what's going on. So we're going to go through it. We're going to go through in some detail today, and we're going to leave the audience hanging and give them an opportunity to have a think about what's really going on in the world.
So, John, you're being a bit of a tease here, aren't you? Because what we're trying to do is to get people to perhaps think beyond the square a little bit.
Absolutely. I've been in the forecasting business for a while now. So I've had a bit of a knack to see things happen before they happen. And quite a few of the examples that I know that I forecasted, I told people privately. Like, for example, Kevin Rudd's 2010 demise. I knew that was going to happen a couple of years before that happened, and Tony Abbott demise in 2015, the rise of Donald Trump. So these were some that I told people privately, and they came true. Then I knew about Malcolm Turnbull, and he was going to be sacked if he won the 2016 election, and that's when I went on the Daily Telegraph on the 10th of June 2016 and wrote an article predicting that he would lose his job by the end of 2017 or the first half of 2018, and he lost his job in August of 2018, so I was only 7 weeks off that prediction. And then obviously I've been predicting about an economic crisis, and we're seeing the early stages of that crisis sort of coming to fruition. But there'll be more to say about economic Armageddon in a couple of shows that we're going to do after this show. But I want to make what I would call my biggest prediction for 2020. And we're going to talk about this economic paradox, which I think is simultaneously unique and profound. So before we get to the paradox, I just want to give the audience a basic explanation about price. So prices are, they're all over the economy, and price is something that we deal with on a daily basis. But price, and we're just going to put up slide one. Price is effectively, it has two components when you're thinking about this from an economic point of view. A price of anything is determined on the value of the good or service, expressed in the unit of currency. So there's two components to a price, the value of the good or service and then the unit of currency. So now what I want to do here is that, so when we talk about the value of a good or service, how do you determine that value? It's a function of demand and supply for that, for that good or service. So what that would mean is that in terms of, for example, basic economic theory says that when you look at the demand for a service, if you have an increase in demand, you have higher prices. If you have a decrease in demand, you have lower prices. And then on the supply equation, if you have an increase in supply, you have lower prices. If you have a decrease in supply, you have higher prices. So if you go to any microeconomic textbook 101, these are some basic economic principles I learned at not only first year university, but high school economics that I did back in 1998, 1999. So these principles have been well established within economics for 200 years, basically, probably going back to Adam Smith. So that's the first component of a price. Then the second component of the price is the unit in which that price, the unit of how that is expressed. So, for example, in Australia, we have Australian dollars. So when you go to the shops or when you buy a product or a service, a good or a service, it's expressed in terms of Australian dollars. Now, if the value of the Australian dollar were to change, independent of the demand and supply of the good, well, then the price of that product will change, because the currency is either gaining value or or it's decreasing in value. So when you think about the value of the dollar, I mean, that's driven by the demand and supply of Australian dollars. And we've talked about this on numerous occasions in terms of the money supply, the Reserve Bank, the Reserve Bank of Australia, and the role of credit. And obviously, you've done a number of other shows on Walk the World with Professor Steve Keen and a whole bunch of other people that have talked about the money supply of credit, etc. So just to go on to our next slide. So the basic element that you need to think of when you're thinking about the value of the Australian dollar, for example, if you increase the supply of money and you have more of a currency, the value of that currency goes down. It decreases. This is what we call the loss of purchasing power, or inflation. Or if you decrease the supply of money, and there's less, for example, Australian dollars in circulation, the value of the dollar goes up, and that's what you call deflation. So these are the basic elements of how you determine a price, and it could be any price in Australia, and these, what I would say is that this basic understanding is fundamental, prerequisite knowledge to get your head around this paradox that we're about to go through.
Right, and John, just a quick point there. Of course, this is basically talking about a free market, isn't it? Essentially, if everything else is, not impinging, like, for example, if central banks do something or regulators do something, or you otherwise controlled or stopped. But in a free market, it is a supply-demand dynamic.
Correct. Yeah. Now the thing is, so the paradox I'm about to present is, I'm going to present to you 4 observable facts about a particular product that you can acquire in Australia. And the paradox, these observable facts are, when we go through them, are, I would say, inconsistent with conventional economic understanding, and it's inconsistent with those basic relationships that we just went through. So we're going to put fact 1 and 2 on the screen. So without revealing what this is, fact 1 is the highest price of this product in Australia was reached in January 1980. Fact 2, according to the RBA, Australia's money supply as defined by broad money in January 1980 was 80 billion. In December 2019, broad money reached 2.154 trillion, representing an increase of 2,593%. So that's the amount of, if you want to call it, inflation that we've had. And one point I would just say on this fact 2, Martin, is that when we look at a whole host of prices right throughout Australia, I mean, for example, whether it's houses or cars, or in terms of rent, in terms of, look, the interesting thing, I was talking to my mother last night, and she came to Australia in 1977, and she said that weekly rent was only $28. So obviously weekly rent today is multiple times higher, and you do have some other factors involved as to housing prices and rents, etc. But one of the things that has driven the price of everything up in Australia has been the growth of money, and obviously you can look at the RBA statistics to determine what has happened with the money supply. So that's fact 2. Fact 3 is the available global supply of this product from late 1979 to the end of 2019 rose by 105%. So before we so just by context is, so the supply of money has gone up 2,593%, but the supply of this actual product in its physical form has only increased by 100% over the 40-year period. And now, so as of 31 December 2019, the price of this product was 42.2% below its January 19 high. So these are the 4 observable facts. when you look at how the growth of money has outstripped the supply of this product, the increase of money is substantially more by multiple factors. So with every product in Australia, everything has gone up in price since 1980, except for one product, and that product is 42% below what it was in 1980, and this was what we recorded at the end of last year. Now I looked it up, looking at this price of this product today, and we're about 40% below the January 1980 high. So without revealing what we're talking about, Martin, you being observer of economics and finance, what do you make of these observable facts?
Well, it's certainly weird. Clearly, this isn't a standard supply dynamic situation. The standard economics doesn't apply. So you've got to assume that either there is something substantial. For example, if I think of the costs of a computing chip now relative to where it was way back, right? It was just, logarithmically cheaper now than there. So in some cases, those sorts of disruptions can actually drive prices down. So in fact, the real price is actually a lot lower. So you could look at that. You could also suggest that maybe there is some sort of manipulation or something else going on that actually means that you don't have a true supply-demand dynamic. And that can be everything from government intervention through to presumably large players deciding to go down a particular road and influence the price of the particular product we're talking about. So you've got to start asking lots of questions about what are the other externalities that potentially can explain why it is behaving the way it is. But clearly, normal economics doesn't seem to be applying.
Exactly. So what I would say, Martin, is that the challenge for the audience is in terms of to identify what this product is that we're talking about, and what are the circumstances and what are the factors that have led to this paradox actually coming about. Because Martin, I think so you and I have done some controversial shows over the last couple of years, and while our audience has stuck with us and they've been open-minded to listen to our explanations, quite a few people in the mainstream media and elsewhere have called us conspiracy theorists. Well, what I've come to learn is that the answer to this paradox is so extraordinary that I think that if I was to reveal what I have come to learn, even our audience would be quite skeptical about what I've been able to discover. So I thought, rather than actually telling them the story of what I think is going on, what I thought is, well, let me pose a question for them, for the audience, and the audience can have a think about, well, what do they think I'm talking about, and we'll obviously see what the audience has to say. So my big prediction for 2020 is that those Australians who can solve this paradox and fully understand why this paradox has come to be, I would say it would change them. So understanding this paradox in its entirety has changed me. I would say that knowing what I know now, I can never go back to the way I was several years ago in terms of my understanding about economics and politics and the world and how the world actually works. So I would say that if people could figure this out, and obviously this sounds like a very extraordinary statement, but I would dare say that if people figure this out, their life on Earth for the rest of their days on Earth will change forever. And that it'll alter them financially, politically, in terms of the political and ideological views, how they view the world and their place in it, perhaps emotionally, even spiritually. So I think this paradox is so profound that it could actually have a very huge impact about how people behave and how people move forward. So what I will do is just, in order to give a bit of a tip for the audience about how to think about this paradox is, so what I would say is it's not only important to identify what the product is, but why are we seeing the behavior that we're seeing. What I would say is that if people go to the effort of trying to figure this out, conventional modes of thought and analysis is unlikely to lead to people solving this paradox. So I think if we think about Edward de Bono and his book about lateral thinking, people need to use a bit of lateral thinking to solve this economic dilemma. And I would say one thing that allowed me to fully grasp the true dimensions of this paradox is in terms of the 1999 movie The Matrix with in terms of Keanu Reeves. So I mean that was based on a French philosopher and a number of his writings. So I would suggest that if people haven't watched The Matrix, I would strongly suggest people go watch that movie. Obviously, I get no commercial return if you go watch that movie, or if you haven't seen it for a while. I would suggest that people go watch that movie, try to understand the core philosophical lessons from that movie. And I think that if you use that mode of thinking that movie provides, it will help you solve this paradox.
And I guess, John, there's also another dimension here, and that is, could it be that economics itself is broken? Because that's the other way to think about it, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I mean, the thing is, very interesting point, Martin, is so I would say on that point is that if we could see these observable facts in other products, but also more importantly at other times of history, we could potentially say that conventional economics is broken, and there is scope for new economic theory. But from what I can see is we have a unique paradox, something that really hasn't happened before in human history, but something that can be observed over the last 40 years, and we can see it now. And conventional ways of thinking about this, about economics, it doesn't actually explain what's going on. So at some point in the future, Martin, I think you and I will go into some detail about what this paradox is and what's actually been involved in this. But until then, if anyone would like to submit their answer to the paradox, feel free to email me, and we'll put my email on the screen, john@adamseconomics.com. And I'm interested to know if people know what this product is and why these observable facts can be observed.
Yeah, this is an enigma inside a mystery, to misquote somebody quite famous who was talking about how complicated things can be. So it's a really very, very concerning thing that you're putting your finger on here, John, because it really does cut to the quick, doesn't it, in terms of some really basic assumptions.
Yeah. So I mean, some people will think that this is some sort of academic exercise. Let me assure people is that, and again, I don't want to be sensational. If you can figure this out, your life will change forever. So people will think this is sensationalism, and people think that I have a perchance for that, but I can guarantee you that this paradox in solving this is so profound, and I should say that it's been profound for me.
Yeah. Well, John, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for that. And we should just say to our viewers as well, we've just crossed the 30,000 subscribers on the Interest of the People. So thank you very much for all the support from all those subscribers. Please continue to share our posts as widely as you can as we build our audience. And we'll be back soon with hopefully a bit of a solution to the paradox that John has today postulated. Martin North, John Adams, in the Interest of the People. We'll see you next time.